The Batman is the latest film in the Batman intellectual property series franchise, whatever you want to call it. This time around, it's another reboot. It's directed by Matt Reeves, who's done the couple of the Planet of the Apes movies, as well as Cloverfield, and it stars Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne / Batman. Now, I was pretty excited for this movie because I really enjoyed Batman the character and his movies, but more so than Batman the central character himself, I must say I'm more of a fan of his side characters. For example, I like Commissioner Gordon, I like Penguin, the Riddler, the Joker, Catwoman, etc. I think his enemies and his supporting characters are much more interesting than the Batman himself. So when I learned that this film was going to have not only Catwoman, but the Riddler as well as the Penguin, I'm like, oh man, all right, let's go for it. Let's see what you can do with it. And I was kind of apprehensive because whenever a movie tries to cram in those many characters, like Spider-Man 3 did, it's just like, okay, can these characters really have enough time to become worth their screen time? And I will say this. In this movie, The Batman, the supporting and characters and the villains are the most interesting part. This is not an origin story, thank goodness. We've all seen the origin story already. We know what it's about. This movie just takes place. It starts off with Batman having been Batman in Gotham City for 2 years, and he's just trying to clean the city up. Gotham is just a shithole of a city. Crime is going up everywhere. There's a new mayor race, and Batman is just trying to make his mark and trying to clean up the city. But yeah, and then this serial killer comes along who is the Riddler, and he's actually trying to toy with Batman and give him these little clues. So in that sense, it kind of has that Seven vibe from that David Fincher film from back in the day, and it's a film I really loved. And I've been wondering why Hollywood hasn't been making these murder mystery thriller type movies anymore. Back in the 90s and the 2000s, I believe there are a lot of these movies, like Silence of the Lambs, Seven, Kiss the Girls, etc. And I would really enjoy these kinds of movies. I love movies that make you think, that make you scared, that make you feel suspenseful, and it's like a whodunit. I really enjoy those kinds of movies, and Hollywood just doesn't make those kinds of movies anymore. So I'm really glad that they took that kind of concept and combined it with the Batman character to make this movie. Now, did it work? Yeah, kinda, sorta. This movie is 3 hours long. Let's start off by saying that. And 3 hours is pretty damn long for any movie, let alone, a comic book based movie. Did it need to be 3 hours long? No. Was I ever bored? Not really, but this movie could have certainly been condensed, I feel, and not really lose anything. There were a couple of times where it was kind of losing me a little bit, and then something would happen, okay, my interest would perk back up and I'm back in the movie now. But I feel like it could have been streamlined a bit more. It didn't need to be 3 hours long. But maybe one blessing of that 3 hour long movie was that, like I mentioned before, the side characters get to be really flushed out. I will say that my favorite character in this movie was the Penguin, played by an unrecognizable Colin Farrell. If you didn't know it was Colin Farrell played this role, you would have never guessed it, because the makeup, the prosthetics, the voice, his voice was just so funny. He kind of had this New York gangster thing going on. I just loved every minute that he was on screen. Just like he was the most charismatic, the most exciting and interesting character in the movie. The Riddler as well, played by Paul Dano. Paul Dano has made a career playing these really weirdo type characters, and he's just a perfect fit for the Riddler, who's the kind of the mastermind behind these serial murders. And Zoe Kravitz as well as Catwoman. I really enjoyed her performance. I thought she nailed it in terms of the character's motivations and her abilities to fight and to be a burglar, etc. I thought she did a really great job as well. Who kind of fell short for me, unfortunately, was the key character himself, Robert Pattinson. No, I'm not gonna dump on his Twilight days or whatever. I think Robert Pattinson is a fantastic actor. I've seen all of his movies since Twilight, actually, and he's kind of been making a career of making these really highly acclaimed independent films, and they're all great. I think he's a fantastic actor, actually. So I was really looking forward to his take on Bruce Wayne / Batman with his high budget kind of film. And he's not bad in it. He just doesn't have much to do, and maybe that's because for the majority of the film, he's in the bat suit. You don't really get to see too much of the Bruce Wayne persona, so you cannot really get to see the Robert Pattinson part of it, if you will. You just see him in the costume like 90% of the time. So it's really difficult for him to really establish himself as a personality, as a character. In all the previous Batman films, you got some pretty serious, heavy screen time with the actors in the Bruce Wayne persona. But in this one, Bruce Wayne's hardly even a character in this movie. It's all about the Batman and him being the vigilante, the justice, etc. So I don't think Pattinson had all that much to work with. I'm sure he did the best he could with what he had to work with, but as a result, he just didn't really make a mark with me. Also didn't care for Alfred, played by, what the hell is his name? The guy who does Gollum. I'm sorry, I forget his name. But yeah, he just didn't fit to be Alfred to me. He didn't feel like an Alfred. It kind of, the look, the personality, I don't know, I just didn't go for it. Yeah, he's barely in the movie anyway. But yeah, so those characters kind of fell short for me. So again, the supporting characters were the ones who have much more interest to me in this movie. Now, the movie takes place, like, I think every scene takes place at night, which is, normally I would be kind of like, I'd be kind of not feeling so good about that, because I like to see things and see things happen. Give lots of credit to the cinematographer, because even though every scene takes place at night, you had no problem seeing what's going on, and I really appreciate that on an artistic level, because I can only imagine how difficult it will be for the lighting, etc., when every scene is supposed to be set at nighttime or in dark clubs or restaurants or dark homes, etc. So I can see that as a lighting nightmare. So big props to the cinematographer. The film looks great. There's a lot of great shots. So, Matt Reeves, the director, did a great job there. But yeah, overall, the story didn't grab me. And I'm trying to think why, because when you make a really good, exciting, suspenseful thriller like The Silence of the Lambs, like The Seven, what are the key elements? First, you gotta have a really interesting and scary villain. And this movie had that. The Riddler was great. Very interesting, very scary, suspenseful. That was great. You gotta have a smart plot. And this movie did have a smart plot. I really liked how it was like Seven, it kind of left a trail of crumbs for Batman to follow the guy along and eventually get to where the villain wanted him to be. So that was enjoyable as well. But other than that, I don't know. Maybe it's just because of the length of the movie, just too long, kind of lost me here and there. The Robert Pattinson not really having all that much to do to showcase his personality. And yeah, there's not too much action in this movie. Normally, you would go into a Batman movie expecting, pretty good action scenes. The action scenes that were in it were pretty well done, but this is a much more grounded movie. So don't go into this movie expecting like Justice League or Avengers or anything like that. This movie is actually very grounded. Batman is just a normal dude who can fight a little bit better than the next guy. He has a suit of armor that protects him, but he takes his beatings, and they keep it really realistic. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about The Dark Knight from Christopher Nolan, because I felt like The Dark Knight was actually a police thriller that just happened to have a superhero as the main character. And I think that's what they were kind of going for this one as well, where there really was no crazy acts of superhuman powers or anything like that. It was just a one normal dude. And I kind of like how they tried to play up the world's greatest detective moniker for Batman. At the same time, I don't feel like he was all that intelligent. I mean, the jokes or the riddles that the Riddler would leave for him, I knew half the answers off the bat as well. So I kind of wanted to see some better detective work if they were going to make this film so grounded like that. So, if you're going to make this film realistic and grounded, let's make him a truly great detective. I just didn't get that from him either. So this movie just fell short for me in a couple of areas. But again, I really enjoyed the supporting characters, and you can definitely tell that they're building towards a new franchise going forward. So I'm still excited for the next film in this series, because they introduced a few things that will kind of launch it into a new characters, etc. So I'm excited for it. At the same time, this movie, okay, I wasn't bored, but I wasn't quite all that excited about it either. So for me, The Batman gets a 6 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching my review. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel, MC on Film, for more reviews in the future.